My name is Miguel. I am a mental health therapist. My dad had been a child soldier in El Salvador during the Civil War of the 80s and 90s. So he was part of that system. And so he saw things. He was traumatized. Because of that, there was substance issues. So he had a lot of alcohol and other drugs that he kind of coped with. Post-Civil War, he was, 15, 16 when he was a soldier and saw people get killed, or he killed some people too. So it's just like, he was traumatized. I lived with a single mom partially, right? Because my dad was in and out because of his substance issues and just not being the greatest dude, kind of thing. I had a lot of anger. Like when I came to the US, I had that grind, but then I quickly started to adapt. And so my cousins, they were wanksters, wannabe gangsters, right? And ran out in Nebraska of all the places, right? And so I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? And I had that anger of I wanted to fight my dad, and I wanted to, tell him
welcome to another edition of the CYR podcast, because when you clean your room, you clean your life. You change your life. Man, I always mess up on that. I don't know why. I always mess up on that. I'll be trying to talk too fast, but y'all know what the hell I mean. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we got my boy, Miguel.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years in the making, bro. Almost 10 years in the making, man. It's crazy.
That's how long we known each other?
Almost, bro. 2017?
Yeah.
Just about. I mean, I fluffed it a little bit, but it,
Yeah, it's close enough.
Close enough. That's what I'm saying, bro. But it's crazy to see how much life has transformed since we first started interacting with each other. Just to give a little background to y'all, we were in grad school together over at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Now, bro is teaching at UNO.
Yeah. And we started at Human Development in 2017, summer 2017. That was our first class.
Yeah.
And you know what was the first class to start teaching at UNO? Human Development.
He said I brought it full circle.
Full circle.
Bro, go ahead and let the people know a little bit about you, who you are, what you do.
Yeah. So my name is Miguel. Something I like to say to everybody is I'm Californian. I am Guatemalan, Salvadorian. So I got 3 identities, right? And we'll talk more about how me growing up kind of helps me to become a therapist. But I am a mental health therapist. I'm an LAMHP in Nebraska, and I'm an LPC in Colorado.
Real quick, break that down, because people might not know what that is.
Yeah. So LIMHP is a licensed independent mental health practitioner, and an LPC is a licensed professional counselor. So every state has different titles, but all you need to know essentially is a therapist. Now, Nebraska makes it a little complicated, and they have 3 tiers, and it's Nebraska. So
it's too much, bro. Man, I feel like the whole nation make it complicated. It's dog, you got to be licensed differently in every state. You got to take a different test. You might have to go back to school. It's just too much. I understand why they don't I understand why they won't, because it's money. But I mean,
it's money, yeah.
Just consolidate that so we can actually help more people.
Yeah, and so if people didn't know, just because you're a therapist on one state doesn't necessarily mean that you can see someone else. So for example, here in Omaha, right, we got Council Bluffs just right here. I'm not licensed in Iowa, so I can't see anybody from Council Bluffs, even though it's just a river away kind of thing. So I think it makes things really complicated. And so I've been trying to get licensed in California, and that's a whole bit other process, which takes forever.
Facts. Mm-hmm. Bro, I want to know, why are you a therapist, dog? Your background, even my background, bro, we don't grow. At least I don't think. I'm about to throw out a huge assumption. Nobody is growing up in our backgrounds, in our racial, ethnic background saying, man, being a therapist is exactly what I want to be when I grow up. And there's probably not too many people in that field who we saw growing up either. So why therapist?
No, yeah. So I'll give you the long version, because I like to get real. I'm deep. I'm a therapist. So, I like to be authentic. So I think 2 reasons. One, my dad had been a child soldier in El Salvador during the Civil War of the 80s and 90s. So he was part of that system. And so he saw things. He was traumatized. But then he also left because of the Civil War. So he came to the US, to LA particularly. A lot of Salvadorians came to LA during that time in the 80s, 90s, and that's kind of where he ended up at. Because of that, there was substance issues. So he had a lot of alcohol and other drugs that he kind of coped with. Post-Civil War, he was 15, 16 when he was a soldier and saw people get killed, or he killed some people too. So it's just he was traumatized. And then he met my mom, and then she was young. They had a teenage pregnancy. She was 17 and stuff like that. So just growing up poor in California was part of me growing up. And so therefore it brought us some interested into like what that looks like specifically for addiction. So fast forward, we moved to Nebraska. And then just seeing my
No, we're at in Nebraska. You're going to have to rep your town in Nebraska, bro.
GI 308, 308, 308. I might get a tattoo. I was talking to my aunt about the 308. Yes, Grand Island, Nebraska. Out of all the places, my family's like, you know what? We're in California. We're going to move. So a little bit before that, actually, we actually lived in Guatemala. So my mom actually left my dad for domestic violence. And so we actually ended up in Guatemala. And I ended up living there close to 5 years. So I did 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade out there. And I think that's been really important for me, not only to speak Spanish and like learn how to read it and write it, but also just growing up in another country taught me different skill sets that I didn't know. So anyways, moved to Grand Island, Nebraska. My parents tried to work things out. But then domestic violence, substance use, kind of similar kind of cycles kind of continue to happen or whatever. And then my dad was all like, you need to go to college, like, which was cool. I was like, I'm glad my dad was all about that. And he was all about like, be a leader, not a follower, which I really appreciated. And then every Sunday, my dad would be hungover. And we had this tradition every Sunday. We had a soup. It's called a caldo de pollo, caldo de res, which means it's like a beef soup or chicken soup or whatever. Because he was hungover, and every Sunday he would give us this propaganda, be like, "Don't trust the government, don't be a leader, stuff like that." And so, like, I think I got that from him particularly, and so he was all about go to college kind of thing. And so fast forward, I ended up coming to UNO for undergrad, and my dad's like, you need to go in the healthcare field. Like that's where the money's at or whatever. And, you know, my dad didn't go to college, so he didn't really know. So he's like, I think dentists make good money. So, so I was pre-dentistry for like the first 2 years. Even went to UNMC and Lincoln to get some like dental stuff or whatever. But then I realized, like, I don't want to be a dentist. Like, I don't want to talk to people, like, talking like, hey, like, hey, you good? Like, you know what I mean? So fast forward again, wanted to be a physical therapist, went to UNMC to become a physical therapist. I actually did a whole year, and actually experienced a lot of racism. And that's kind of where my mental health career kind of started. I had gone to like the therapy on campus at UNO as an undergrad, just because I was having a lot of anxiety and it was that time where I was processing kind of like some of my dad's stuff isn't healthy. So UNO does like, they give you like 6 sessions or something like that. So it was like super small, but I was able to get some skills. And so when I went to UNMC, I experienced a lot of racism, and that's kind of where my anxiety kind of really kicked in. Like I was going to a doctor, my left eye was like shutting, my back was hurting, I wasn't sleeping, and like I would go to doctors and they were like, "You're just stressed. Like don't be anxious." And I was like, "Well, how do I cure
this don't help?"
Like, how do I cure that?
Yeah.
But nobody gave me therapy, and I think that's the thing that I never understood. Like nobody was like, "Go see a therapist and like manage your anxiety and stress." And so one of my exams I like blanked. Like I got to the test, I studied. And I was like, I've never seen this before. And so that's how I knew that my anxiety was bad. I was like, oh, dude, like I'm blanking. Like I don't even know what's happening here. And so I failed the test. And my advisor at that time was like, I made this comment, was like, oh, your kind doesn't make it this far, so you should just quit.
That's wild.
And that broke me, man. That really did. I started to believe that internalized thinking that like, maybe you're right. Maybe like Latino people aren't smart. Like maybe I'm not smart enough like white people, you know? And so I was like, I gave up. Like I was like suicidal. I was very depressed. And then luckily my friend who was a PA, so the PAs and the PTs take class together. And he's black, and he was like, dude, you need to speak out. Like, that's racist. Like, I'll do it for you. And he really challenged me on speaking out because he had experienced some racism there too. They had told him that, like, you look angry. And he's like, dude, I'm black. Like, and he was like a bigger, taller black man. And he was just like, I'm just trying to go in and go out. Like, I'm not trying to make friends or whatever. He had kids and all that stuff. And so me and him really like confided in each other, and we're like really like, we're there for each other during that time. And so he convinced me to speak out. I did. And then they did this, like their investigation or whatever. And they're like, I don't think you know the difference of someone being racist and someone being firm with you. And that's how I knew. From there, I knew like I'm on my own, you know, kind of thing. And so that ultimately led me to get kicked out of the program, which was really like for me a big failure. Like I was like, man, I got kicked out. I didn't fail in those classes, which was crazy to see that I got kicked out. But because of my GPA wasn't high enough, I got like a C on human anatomy, and it was like a 9 credit class. So it just tanked my GPA or whatever. And so I left and I was suicidal. I actually, I really recommend the hotlines. For the first time, like I used those hotlines and I used those several times. And honestly, like that probably saved me because I was just super suicidal because I was like, this is what I thought was smart. I thought I was going to be doing that. And so my mom was like, come back to Grand Island. I think you're not doing so hot. Come, we'll take care of you and kind of stuff like that. And that's kind of where I started therapy for the second time. And then I saw a Latina therapist for the first time. And it was different. It was very different because I was able to speak in English and Spanish. She understood what racism looked like. And it wasn't like I had to explain like what's going on in my mental health kind of thing. So that was really helpful, being with a Latina therapist. She was a Cuban therapist. In Grand Island, of all the places, like she was the only therapist in town. And so it worked out that I saw her. And I think that's kind of what the therapy sparked, like in my mind. I'll be like, huh, interesting. There's science behind it and there's an art behind that. And they, you know how they teach us that in grad school. Like therapy is a science because you need to know the science behind it, but there's an art because every therapist is different. The way that they express themselves, the artistic way that they approach things and stuff like that. So that really sparked that. But then this is where the stigma we're talking about. And I was like, who's going to pay a therapist, a Latino therapist? Like, I know my community. Nobody's going to come to therapy. So I had that stigma. So I was like, I need to either go back to PT school or I need to be a nurse or I need to do something because I want to be in the healthcare system. So I got a internship at in South Omaha. Like, what was I was an interpreter, translator, front desk. I was doing it all. And a lot of the patients would come and the doctors were just like, kind of like, you're stressed. Kind of the similar thing that I got. And would just medicate them and that's it. Like, but they wanted to talk more. So I was the interpreter. And so they would tell me their problems. They're like, oh, it's because like, yes, I have diabetes, but I'm also like low income and this, and they would talk to me. And I was like, interesting. I really like I don't like here's the medication. I like the talking part of it. And so then I went to therapy for the third time. And then I started kind of working on my own trauma. And then that's kind of where I decided like, okay, I think I can do it. I want to be the first, maybe no Latino people go to therapy at that time, my stigma. But I want to be the first to kind of create that space. So that's kind of the long story of how I ended up here.
Man, that's a beautiful story, bro. Mm-hmm. Hey, real quick, I just wanted to take some time to thank you for taking time out of your day to tune into this video. But also on the same note, I wanted to let you know that only 12% of you right now are actually subscribed to the channel. So like, I would truly be grateful if you just hit that subscribe button for me and continue to tune into this content that I'm producing. I also wanted to let you know that I got something big planned for y'all. If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or somebody who's looking to make money online, then you don't want to miss out on this 5-day workshop that I'm putting on. It's called the Mindset to Money Challenge. During this workshop, I will be unveiling all of my secrets that help me go from no clients, no business, no nothing, to making over $850,000 in the last 3 years. And check this out, I'm not holding anything back. Everything that I use and know I will be giving to you during this, because the thing that I want to see happen is that you flourish in your business, that your entrepreneurship booms, and that whatever dollar that you're trying to touch, you're able to do that. So be sure to drop down in the description. I think we're gonna put the link somewhere down there. Drop down in that description, click that and lock in your spot. ASA Mother Loving P. And also, I would encourage you, make sure you get a VIP ticket, because with that VIP ticket, you're gonna be able to access a Q&A that happens before the workshop happens, where you get direct contact with me. You can ask me anything. And I promise you, I'm an open book. I'm not holding anything back because I wanna see you thrive. So again, make sure you lock in your spot to the Mindset to Money Challenge today. And I'll be sure to see you there. Now let's get back to the video. Peace. Something that I've noticed with everybody that I've had on the pod so far is there's always this journey, bro, of like going through shit to truly figure out like purpose. And like, as we're going through shit, we really don't realize like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's like we're just going through it. and it's like I'm feeling this, and it's like life is just hitting you, bro. And hearing your story, life is just hitting you. You know what I'm saying? But if it wasn't for those hits, you wouldn't be on this couch right now. I probably wouldn't even know you. You know what I'm saying? Like I probably wouldn't, or I might know you in a different light and in a different way. But like we wouldn't have had the experience of going to school together and being on the other side and being therapists together. And so like, I truly think there's like a beauty to the pain and to the hardships that we go through in life. And that's also something that I talk to my clients about too. Because a lot of them are going through these acute situations and even going through just like continuous like trauma. You know what I'm saying? I primarily work with young Black boys and black individuals who are aged anywhere from like 12 to like 40. And a lot of people in the Black community struggle with PTSD and they don't even know it. Like they think, oh, they just got anger issues. Oh, they're just off-putting. They got this, they got that. But it's really just like unprocessed trauma and repressed trauma that nobody ever told them it was trauma. They just told them this was normal. And so they just shove it down. This is just a part of my life, like shove it down. And so like the moment that individuals are able to really understand that and really see like their journey and acknowledge their pain, that's the moment that they're able to actually like start to connect my life experience to like my purpose in my life. Because what I just heard from you was purpose, bro. That's purpose. I think that's so dope. How has it been being on the other side of, what we call it, the other side? Yeah, we're gonna call it the other side. Being on the other side of your journey and being able to fulfill like that purpose that you were able to step into.
I think I like, before the pain was affecting my body, my emotions, my whole self, and now sitting across someone else and them starting that journey and knowing that there's a light out there, there's hope, right? Being able to provide that hope is really important. But myself being able to be like, I'm in the other side where now I get to be like, I believe in you. Things will get better. Like, maybe right now it feels like you're getting punched left and right, but it's not a forever thing. Like, let's figure these things out to kind of help you get out of this situation or at least manage the situation to the best abilities that you can. And I think that gives me joy, and I truly believe in the ripple effect, right? Someone invested in me, and then I invest in someone, and it ripples across communities, across their families, their friends, and stuff like that. So by me choosing to get healed, I get to help heal other people, and they get to heal other people, and I truly believe in that.
For sure. I want to go back a little bit, man, because another thing that you were talking about is something that I think many people deal with. But they never talk about it and it never gets addressed. You were having all these symptoms of anxiety and of stress, and you were seeking out medical advice, and they were just like, like, what do you do? Can you talk more just like about how stress and anxiety really can impact the body, and even depression too, and like what that can look like?
Yeah, like, so I give an example, like my left eye was shutting, so like I couldn't really see. I wasn't able to sleep as well, so therefore like I had to rely on more caffeine, which wasn't helpful because then that caffeine like accelerates your heart rate, and so that was like becoming very dependent on caffeine. And like all my life I wasn't doing energy drinks until that year, like because I had to keep going. So I started to cope in ways that I wasn't eating really clean, so I would either eat too much or not at all because of anxiety. And then in the mornings, I would always want to throw up. So I always wanted, like, every time I would drive on Dodge towards UNMC, like I wanted to throw up every time. So like, just like I couldn't eat in the morning. And so like my nutrition got affected. I was hot tempered too. Like I was dating a girl at that time, and I was mean. Like I was not a good partner. I wasn't patient enough. I think it affected my spiritual life too. I just like, I felt like everybody was gonna get out to get me, so I just was like not go to like church or whatever that is. I like pushed people off, and then physically as well, my back was hurting. I don't know if some of you guys know, but anxiety and trauma sometimes manifest in the body, and so sometimes it's like a local pain. So in my back, which just always hurt. And I was like pretty athletic at that time. I would play soccer and stuff, so it wasn't like an injury, but I just like couldn't work out anymore. And so that also made me really sad because I wasn't able to work out as I did before.
Man. It's something that's not talked about, just like how our anxieties, how our depression, how our trauma truly manifests in physical conditions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there are people out there who are stressed that are feeling sick. I've even went through this before, like just being stressed and overwhelmed and just having like constant tension headaches to the point to where it like turns into migraines. And I'm like, dog, like what is wrong? Something's wrong with me. I got a brain tumor. WebMD. And they're like, yeah, you're going to die in like 2 weeks, bro. Like, but no, it's like for real, like really being aware of how our stress affects our body. And when we place like they call it toxic stress, right? Like when we place that on ourselves over long periods of time, it really can manifest into physical conditions. And so just being aware of that stuff, bro, I think it's super important.
Yeah, and it reduces your lifeline. Like anxiety and stress unmanaged can reduce your lifetime like 10 to 15 years, because I think there's a study. It's like you're smoking a pack a day. Like that's how bad anxiety is for you, or like not able to manage your stress. So I know like in social media now it's like very trendy, like self-care and stuff like that, which is good, but part of self-care is actually helping yourself be balanced, and that balance comes not only from your emotions but also comes from your spirit, but also comes from your physical side, right? So you gotta pray or meditate, but then you also gotta work out, but you also gotta like, spend time with family, And so that's a balanced life. And I think sometimes in the Western world, we're about go, 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 right? I mean, we live in a capitalist society where it's like you gotta produce. Like that's what US is about, right? You got to produce, you got to make money, you got to grind, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's also when that's only our mindset and we don't know how to rest, that really messes us up.
That's where it becomes toxic. Where it becomes toxic. I want to go back. I want to go further back, man. We're about to pivot a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell us about your experience living in Guatemala and just like the differences that you've noticed between living in the States, living in Cali, living in Grand Island.
Yeah.
Grand Island. And then living there.
Yeah. So in Guatemala, so I like to say I lived with a single mom partially, right? Because my dad was in and out because of his substance issues and just not being the greatest dude, kind of thing. And so those 5 years, my dad really wasn't present. So it was my mom, right? And so that led to me being like my brother's basically dad. And I think that's kind of has like some tension between my brother and I, because we're 7 years apart. But I would have to take care of him because my mom had 3 jobs. So it was just me and him. And luckily we had family that would support us and stuff like that. So I felt like I grew really quickly where I was kind of the responsible one. I had to take my brother to school. I had to go help him with his homework, and I did my homework and all this other stuff, go to school, take the bus out there. Like it's public transportation. So I had to walk to school, take the bus. And so I think I just, got to know like poverty in Guatemala is very different than poverty here. I'm just seeing like kids that were like begging for money. Like that's very different to see and stuff like that, or selling stuff, fruits and vegetables and whatnot. And so, yeah, I think seeing like that poverty also, like I have a story, like in 5th grade, my mom was so poor that we like, I couldn't have shoes. So we put cardboard, like that, like is still something I still remember, that I had cardboard on my shoes. Like I didn't have shoes because my mom couldn't afford it and my dad wasn't present. And so seeing that type of poverty and living that poverty was really hard. And also like to the point where like meat wasn't even available, like a beef, like if we had beef and like a small little Coke on the weekends, like that was like our like blessing kind of thing. So just like even like not having income for enough food, like food was there, but it wasn't like, like meats and stuff like that. So I think that did something for me, because I'm like, I don't want to be this poor, kind of thing. And and luckily a lot of our family in Guatemala are very about like, go study, do your thing. And my mom, because she was single mom, she just we experienced a lot of poverty, even though like our family there is a little bit more medium class than anything else. And so, I think that it made me see the world and appreciate the world differently. So then when I came to the US, I'm like, yo, there's so many opportunities here. Like there's no way you can be broke here, right? Obviously, there's systemic issues and racism and all that, redlining, all that stuff, right? But like, I came with the mentality of like, yo, you can conquer everything. Like, oh, there's no opportunities. Like, there's literally no opportunities for work here. There's a lot. So I think that kind of gave me that, like, I guess, edge. I guess.
Definitely. I know just from talking to a lot of my friends and people in my network who are immigrants and who come over, they have that same perspective because they're coming from places where there's not a lot of opportunity. And like you said, poverty looks a lot different than poverty over here. And so it's like, it's poverty in a lot of different places is like, you just born into that and you're stuck in it and there's nothing else you can do about it unless like by the blessing of somebody, they throw some money in your pocket and give you a business or something like that to grow. Over here, there's so many other opportunities. But like you said, man, there's still so many things that keep people at a disadvantage and keep them impoverished. And we're not gonna go into that because
we have to name it because I think sometimes in the Latino community, and we could talk a little bit about anti-blackness, right? Can be anti-blackness in the Latino community of being like, oh, like you guys are born here, have stuff like, why don't you guys have more money? And like, but they forget that there is systemic systems that like have Black folks in red line districts or whatever, kind of thing. And also it's like a privilege to even immigrate. Like that, the reality is like some folks like can't even move because it's like a U-Haul costs what, like a G, 2 G's to move. So it's not like you can just move somewhere. And so even moving to the US is a privilege that not a lot of people can have, because who's going to let you $1,200 to borrow to move, right?
Facts.
So you need someone to know that, to have that, right?
Exactly. You make a good point with that, bro.
Yeah.
Being in poverty, bro, and then like you mentioned just like not having your dad there during that time, I could only imagine there was probably a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of just like, bro, where the fuck you at? Like what is this going on top of the trauma that he was creating in your household before and even after? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had a lot of anger. Like when I came to the US, I had that grind, but then I quickly started to adapt. And so my cousins, they were wingsters, wannabe gangsters, right? And ran out in Nebraska of all the places, right? Yeah. And so I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, right? And I had that anger of like, I wanted to fight my dad and I wanted to, like tell him, like I would make fun of him that he like only dated like unattractive women or whatever and cheating on my mom and stuff like that. And so I was always on his face. And then because I was in this kind of wannabe gang, I thought it was tough and stuff like that. So there was a lot of deep anger, resentment, and like I hated that guy. Like if I was honest, like now I've learned to forgive him and accept him, and now I see him as more complex of being like, oh, you were traumatized, like you're a child soldier, immigrant, all this other stuff. Like you had addiction issues, right? Nobody taught you how to heal, right? So I think I see him in a more empathetic way. But at that particular moment, I was just incredibly hurt and anger. I was angry that the way that he mistreated my mom and whatnot. And then I became that unhealthy role of a husband, brother, friend, uncle to my brother, to my mom. And so I became to this unnecessary role that a lot of like I would say older kids kind of happen,
It even happens with younger kids too. Like we see it a lot, bro. We see it so much in single mother households where there's a boy who typically is the oldest. They have to adopt all these different roles. They adopt like the role of the man of the house. They adopt the role of the person who mom confides to, but then also, also you still are receiving discipline and lecturing from mom too. So then there's like this confusion with the boy. It's like, you want to come to me for this. And you want to talk to me about this and you want me to do all these things, but then you're still telling me what to do. Like, man, get up out of here. You know what I mean? And that's where we find like a lot of these young boys like running to the streets because it's like, you're not about to tell me what to do, but then ask me to do all this other, like, nah, that ain't how this work.
Yeah. So fortunate or unfortunate, all like my cousins and the gang that I was kind of hanging out with all kind of ended up going to juvie or whatnot, or like getting going sent to group homes and stuff. So I was kind of left I guess alone, I guess. And so it was like a kind of a blessing and a curse because then I had no friends. So I had to like readapt myself because all my freshman high school friends ended up getting sent somewhere. And then also like the comment, I would tell my mom several times, like, just leave this guy. Like you're confining me about how much you're like unhappy. Like, why are we still in this situation? And obviously that leads to systemic issues as well, right? Being able to move, get out of housing, right? All that stuff, right? That she was looking at in a bigger picture, which I can understand, but still.
Yeah. No, I get that. What was the experience like? And if you can, try to take us there, bro, because I think it's a picture that a lot of people don't see, but there's so many people who do see it. Like, what was that experience like, seeing your mom be a victim of domestic violence by the hands of somebody who you're supposed to love?
Yeah. So I mean, and I think some of you know that trauma sometimes block things out. So I'm still unblocking some of those memories, but I remember one particular memory of just like pushing him off and stuff like that. And so just seeing that the mistreatment is just like, and it was always after substance was like involved. It was never like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, stuff like that. For the most part, my dad was really good at being a functioning like alcoholic. Like he was able to go to work Monday to Friday, really committed, never missed a day, always worked. But the weekends, like we always knew the weekends. We had this joke. There was a Casey's near our house, and he would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to Casey's and get some scratch tickets and some candy. Anybody want some?" And we're like, "Yeah." And then he like wouldn't come back till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I'd be like, "Dude, Casey's like, how far did you go?" So it'd be like this joke that we do. But yeah, so seeing that, or even picking up my dad from the county jail because he had got a DUI, like just like those memories of that, or picking up from the bar, and like towards the end it was fun because he would be like, "Hey, you want some tacos? Like I got you." Like he was fucked up already, so he was like, "Hey, I got you. Like you want some Mickey D's or whatever." When he was starting to become more responsible after like his third or fourth DUI or whatever, But just seeing that was like it like. I always said I don't want to be like that, man. Like if I ever get in a relationship, and whatnot. But I think a lot in therapy, we decide we don't want to become that, and then we become that. And then when I started having a serious relationship, become aggressive and violent, and I was recreating those patterns, and that's when I went to therapy for the first time, because I was like, I went to UNO and I was like, dude, I don't want to become that person.
Yeah. Can you talk a little more on that?
Yeah. So I think, I started to become unfaithful, just like my dad. Like I started to do everything, even though I told myself I don't want to do that. Like, I was unfaithful to one of my girlfriends, and I was just, and I felt really shitty. I was like, damn, like, I felt like I understood my dad, but now I was like, I'm becoming him. And I didn't know how to control my emotions. And so, I was never physically violent, but I was just very verbally abusive. And I didn't like that look. And I know that if I didn't heal, that was just going to keep escalating, where I would become violent, just like my father, because that's what I knew, that's what I saw, and that's what I thought, that's how you process anger. Even though I know that wasn't the right way, I didn't know there was another way, and nobody taught me that. No, I didn't have like a mentor or anything like that, until I did have a mentor in high school, and they were both like, hey, you need therapy, man. And that's kind of how it started.
Definitely. Yo, real quick, I almost forgot. As a licensed therapist, I'm big on mental health, and I'm big on making sure that you're taking care of you. And I also want to get rid of this stigma that we got towards mental health. Like, there's nothing wrong with talking to a therapist. So if you're somebody that's out there that really wants to start getting their mind right, who wants to really start understanding their emotions and being able to process things that you probably repressed, that you probably ain't talked about, that you might have been even ashamed about talking about. Or check this out. You might not be ashamed about it, and you just ain't found a person for you to talk to. You want to find somebody that's relatable, that can understand you, got a little swag, you know what I'm saying? A little swag. And they not too far removed. Make sure that you tap in with Bear Company Counseling. All you got to do is hop down in the description, click the link, put in your info, and the front desk rep will reach out to you and get you plugged in with a therapist that I promise you, as long as you're ready, will help you to get whatever you need right up here so that you can succeed in every other avenue and aspect of your life. Tap in with a therapist today at Bear Company Counseling. Now you can get back to the video for real. I promise I won't hop back in again. something that I always try to stress to my clients, and it's along the lines of what you just said. We become the very thing that we hate the most. We always do. Mm-hmm. I see this so often with clients who have so much hate and animosity towards their parents. I mean, and justifiably so. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they put them through things, just like you were explaining, put you through things. But when we're not able to process through our emotions and we start to harness and harbor these deep, unhealthy when we harbor them, at least. Like having them is not unhealthy, but harboring them, like when we have them there and we just let them fester and we feed that hatred, especially for our parents, our primary relationship, like we will become that very thing. A lot of us will say like, I'm never going to be like, fill in the blank. I'm never going to be like my dad. I'm never going to be like my mom. I'm never going to be like such and such and such. But the fact of the matter is like, they were the ones who modeled everything for us. And so how are we not going to be like the very thing that we watched and we learned from? You know what I'm saying? Like you look in nature and we look at all these different animals and they're not talking about anything. They're not doing, the animals are just there and they watch. And then next thing you know, they do, you know what I'm saying? And we're no different. We just got a little bit more capability and a little bit more intellectual properties that we can exercise. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, in order to not become the thing that we hate, we have to relinquish that hate and we have to truly heal it. That doesn't, in situations, that doesn't necessarily mean like we have to allow a person back into our life if we don't want to. It doesn't mean we have to develop this tight bond relationship. But what it does mean is like, we have to learn to let go of all of that emotion that we have pent up, because if we don't, one, we can't acknowledge that this person imparted on us. Like they created us. They developed us. And so part of us is them. And then we can't own that and take accountability for that and make a different choice. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And it sounds like you going to therapy allowed you to be able to heal from that and start to say, okay, I see that why you did some of this stuff, man. You were a child soldier. Like you had a lot of trauma, the way you were brought up and where you were brought up, bro. Like I probably would have adopted some of the same things. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I gain an understanding for it. I don't excuse it, but I gain an understanding for it, and I'm able to forgive you for that and move on with my life so that I can start doing differently consciously.
And you get to see the complexity of human nature, right? Of just like, sometimes it is environment, right? And sometimes it's genetic, right? We talk about intergenerational trauma, right? Sometimes it's generations of domestic violence and substance use, right? And I think that was the case for my family. And I like to tell my clients, like, I hope to be there to break these generational cycles, right? And if you heal, you'll be able to create a new dynamic where you won't do that. But how are you going to get there, right? And I think a lot of men, like, I got it. Like I could heal myself. And my dad has this thing where he says, yo me hago terapia yo mismo, which means like I do therapy myself. And I'm like, it makes me laugh because he's always like, I don't need a therapist. I just do therapy myself, which is, I think he's tapping into a little bit of CBT, right? Which is kind of what you're doing. Yeah. But at some point, like, you can't therapize yourself, right? You need either a mentor, a pastor, spiritual guide to kind of help you, a therapist, right?
Some type of outside perspective.
Sometime, and it doesn't always have to be therapy, right? Because, there's obviously therapy is expensive and lack of insurance or lack of income, right? And so it's not, in an ideal world, you should be able to go to therapy, right? But I know that sometimes that's not possible, right? But you need an outside perspective to come in. I like to say it's kind of like a book. Like, I'm here to kind of read that book with you, right? To look at the couple chapters that are already written, but I'm also here to kind of write the new chapters, right? And these new chapters can still have some of the elements of the first chapters, but we can create that. But we can just read back and forth and create the new thing. But if you don't have anybody there, you're going to just keep writing the same stuff.
Because you can only go off of what you know. Boom. What kind of barriers do you think, going along the lines of what you were just speaking about, what type of barriers do you think Latino men face when it comes to like actually getting and seeking out help or believing like, I even need help?
I think machismo is hard. So machismo is like, this patriarchal of like be a man, right? And so it's very ingrained, and it's also very colonial, right? Because a lot of our indigenous background in Latin America is actually not that. It's actually like came from the Spanish and the Portuguese and stuff like that. And there was like a caste system, right? And so that's why colorism is a big issue in Latin America. Anti-blackness is a big issue, but also like the patriarchy, the hierarchy, right? So a white man was the legitimity of power, right? And a indigenous woman or a black woman was the lower of the caste system within Latin America for centuries, right? That's kind of how the system was. And so therefore, like the more man you were, the more power you had and stuff like that. And I think that's been a continuing of like what you're told, right? Be a man, don't cry, don't show emotions and stuff like that. So I think first acknowledging that that's very problematic is one, and then two, like, are you open to the idea that there's more than that kind of thinking? And that's hard. That's a hard sell. So I think a lot of men that I do get, unfortunately, sometimes it is mandatory therapy. And so it's like, because they got a DUI or, you know, they're trying to get their kids back or something, right? And so it sometimes it takes a while for them to open up that there can be another way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of it. Now, for your own will or own, like without mandatory therapy, I think sometimes it's just like a little bit that rock bottom, right? It's like you already isolated yourself from family, friends, where you're like, all right, I really need it, but I'm like, you don't need to hit rock bottom to get there, right? And so I think sometimes it happens in that level. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. How do you think you start to chip away at those dynamics and make it so that seeking out help, talking to a therapist, working on your mental is just like, I was gonna say brushing your teeth, but it's a lot of people who don't brush their teeth, bro.
That's true. That's true.
A lot of I don't even want to talk about that,
or
bro.
Floss.
Oh, bro,
like,
the plaque buildup, bro. That bothers me so much. It bothers.
How do you just eat like a steak and then like just go to sleep and not like floss?
Breath smelling like ass, bro. Ain't no way. But yeah, how do you start to chip away at that?
I let me think about this. I think it is by example, by other men. Like other men need to lead by example, like ourselves, like being like a therapist and a community member, that there can be a better way. And I think that's where boys can really start seeing that. Because if they only see a version of a man, that's all the version they can see. But if they see a different version, then I think that changes their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the mentors that I had in college, he was white and she was Latina. And just being able to see like, yo, he never like yells at her. He like cooks and cleans and like he does all this stuff. Like it shifted things. In my mind, I was like, oh, Latino men don't do that. Like either you just show up, you work, and like women do all of it. And so it's just being able to see another man do something different and being like, oh, that's okay. And that's fine, I think was for me kind of that moment where I was like, oh, I want to be a different kind of man. So even now, right now, like the dynamics with my wife is like, I'm kind of the one that cooks and cleans. And because I work from home, I'm a telehealth therapist. So I got the time and my wife works at a hospital. So I want to care for her and love her that way. Even though sometimes my family feels like has criticized that of being like, yo, well, how come your wife doesn't cook and stuff like that?
Why she ain't make you a plate first?
Yeah, she make you a plate. And the thing is like, I like to make the plate, you know, and I get to do that. And so therefore other men that see that are like, oh, cool. You know, that's perfectly normal. And I think the more people are healed, the more men are out there tapping into out of gender roles. And I feel like people are more laid back about that.
Most definitely. I'm going to hop back real quick. You mentioned you mentioned the concept of generational trauma and how traumas are passed down. And I think one that we don't talk about a lot, right? But it's right in our face all the time is substance use, like you said, and how substance use is so ingrained into culture. Yeah. Right. Like I know in Black culture, I also know in Latino culture as well too, because my wife is Latina. So like the partaking in just like drinking, smoking at every occasion and at every time that we can. It's something like it's normalized, and it's almost like this is just a part of our culture, but it really is a generational trauma. Can you talk a little bit about like how you begin to unpack generational traumas with clients when they're ready to?
For substance or just in general?
Just in general, or even
I can start with substance. I think just to kind of like keep talking, like when there's always alcohol at a 1-year-old birthday party, like it's kind of hard. And that like, and for my clients that really want to be sober, like the reality is like alcohol is involved in every Latino party. Baptism, 15 quinceañeras, 15 parties, grandma's 80th, like someone shows up with like a stack of Modelo Corona beers and it's like, or like a cookout, a carne asada cookout, there's always beer. Yeah. So it's really, really hard, to do that. Or I think now generations since the 80s, cocaine, like it's like in Latin America, like I took my nephew to a soccer game and everybody in the bathroom was like, hey, saca la bolsita, who has perico, which means like cocaine, like who has cocaine? I was like, bro, it's a soccer game. Like, why are you guys like doing coke in the bathroom, like on a soccer game? And so he's like 10. He was like, what is that? So I had to explain like what that meant and stuff. So sometimes substances is just generational because it had become normalized that's kind of like culturally what you do. But when that's culturally what you do is really harmful for the community, then it's not good, right? And so I like to say to all my clients with substance and trauma, I'm like, there's 5 types of borrachos or drunks. Like you're the one that wants to sleep with anything or everything. There's the one that you want to fight. There's the one that you want to cry. There's the one that's on your feels, all right? And there's like the happy giggly one, right? And I'm always like, which one are you? And they're like, oh, I'm the fight one, or I'm the one to sleep with everybody, right? And so you start creating those generational cycles again, right? Because that leads to domestic violence, or that leads into infidelity. And then here we go back again. And so substance sometimes is that creation of continuing these cycles over and over and over and over again.
How do you really start to shift the behavior? Because a lot, like you said, like some of the things that have become normal that really are trauma responses, like they're so ingrained to just like everyday life, whether it be substances or whether it be something else, even infidelity, right? Like I had my dad on a pod a couple episodes back, and he was just talking about how his dad was a serial cheater, how his dad's dad was a serial cheater, how he became a serial cheater, even my own struggles with just womanizing and doing.
Me too. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's hard.
How do you start to like, from a clinician perspective, right? And you're working with your client, and they're telling you like, man, I got these struggles. I got this thing that like I've seen. What's the word I'm looking for? I've seen. I was about to say mimicked. Yeah. I've seen modeled. There we go. Yeah. Modeled. I've seen modeled so many times. And like for a while I thought it was normal, but I just feel so empty. I feel like, you know what I'm saying? I feel all these different things. Like, how do I change this?
I think a good one is the stages of change, right? Where it's like you're in the contemplation stage of being like, I may have a problem, but I don't know if I want to change, right? I think it's pre-contemplation, contemplation, right? And then it's what is it? Preparation, and then it's action, and then maintenance, right? And so there's a stage, right? And sometimes it can be linear and not linear, right? In regards, but first we have to know that that's an issue. Then 2, acknowledge that we have an issue. And then 3, start preparing to do what do I do with that issue? And then 4th, then I have an action on what I do with that issue, right? So, example, for generational infidelity, right? 1 is recognizing I may struggle with that. Like maybe I'm just very flirtatious, a high libido, like stuff like that. And then the 2nd is like, maybe I don't want to be that. Maybe I want. How do I control it? How do I put myself in certain situations? Right? Is that communicating with my partner and being like, "Hey, I see that person attractive, and I just need to tell you to keep me accountable, so I don't, so I'm not checking them out or trying to holler at them or DMing on them or whatever, Yeah. Or is that having strong boundaries of being like, "Hey, when it comes to me substances with a gender that I feel attracted to, maybe I shouldn't do that, right? Or maybe I need to be sober if I do hang out one-on-one because I know I won't cross boundaries and stuff like that." So having a plan for that is, I think, let me go back. Sorry. Acknowledging that we may have an issue is the first part. Sitting with that, being vulnerable with that can be really healing. And then in therapy, you do that. And then after that, then trying to figure out like, what do we do when that comes up?
Nobody talks about though, as I'm doing that, right? Nobody talks about the potential ostracization. Ostracization.
It's a hard word.
Yeah. But like people now, like who were used to partaking or used to seeing you do certain things, used to seeing you live your life a certain way, used to seeing you respond to certain things. Another one is just like acts of aggression, right?
Yeah.
Generational trauma, feeling like I always got to defend myself or feeling like I always got to fight. Like, and now I've acknowledged the problem. I've acknowledged that I have a problem and I'm trying to change it.
Yeah.
The people around me now see me in a different light and see me in a different way and they don't want to be around me. How do I start to navigate those relationships and that almost like that removal from like what I've known for so long?
It's grief, man. Sometimes you gotta grief that like your relationships, like maybe it's your high school homie or your college homie. Sometimes we outgrow them, right?
But they always have my back, bro.
Yeah.
They always have my back.
and that's hard, but sometimes you outgrow some of this, right? And it's not saying that you can't be friends with them anymore, but I think sometimes there's categories how deep you can get with certain people. And some people it's more of a high and by and like let's go watch a game or let's say bye or whatever. And there's friends that you allow depthness inside, right? Like me and you can get real, right, about things. I think because we're therapists, but we can also be like, dude, I really struggle with this, or hey, here's what it looks like or whatever. But there's some friends that you can't really get that deep, even though that you might have a history. But sometimes we outgrow friends, and I think that's can be a really hard conversation, and we don't talk about that often. Outgrowing friends, not because we think we're better than them or anything like that, but sometimes they're in that state of life anymore. They're not giving us that healing that we desire, right? It maybe like puts us back, right? Because if it's a homie that always wants to smoke and party or whatever, and you're like, dude, we're 30. Like, I'm not trying to go to a club with 21-year-olds, kind of thing. And he's out there trying to do that. Like, that maybe not it anymore, right? Maybe you want to be able to talk about business and growth and ideas and healing and books and stuff like that. And so sometimes we outgrow that, which can feel really grief in that moment, because you do lose friends. The more you heal, you're gonna start putting boundaries, right? Because they'll be like, come on, man, let's go get fucked up and like, cheat on your wife or whatever, right? And it's like at some point, like, I don't want to do that because I don't want to do that to my wife,
Facts. I think we can outgrow our relationship with friends and with family.
Correct.
And I don't think it's a bad thing, to the point that you were making. It doesn't, just because you outgrow somebody doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you don't like them. It doesn't mean that you have any type of ill feeling toward them. It just means you've identified a place in your life that you want to be. You've identified this idea of yourself, this version of yourself that you want to achieve. And me being in proximity with you for extended periods of time will take me away from the idea and the version of myself that I see myself living out.
Yep.
And like you said, it's okay to set those boundaries. But I think a lot of times we get this internal guilt.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm letting them down, or like I said to you when you were talking, like, dang, they was there for me through X, Y, and Z, and they had my back through all of this. I think a really good example, bro. I remember I was watching. Hey, you ever seen the Colin Kaepernick special on Netflix?
I think part of it. Yeah, I don't think I watched all of it. Yeah.
So it was this one particular part, bro, and I think it really hit, like, and it hits to this point. When he was younger, he was trying to hang out with these kids, and they was doing all type of shit that they shouldn't have been doing. And I remember he was like, "Let me come with y'all," or something like that. And the dude was like, "Nah, bro, you got too much online. Like, you about to go play in the NFL, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. You ain't coming with us." You know what I'm saying? I think that's what a real friend or a real family member would do when they see that you have these dreams, these goals, these visions of yourself that don't align with the lifestyle that they're living. Yeah. They'll tell you, they're like, "No, you can't be over here because I see what you're trying to become." And it's not because they hate you, but it's because they actually love you. Correct. And it's the same thing vice versa when I'm saying like, "Nah, I'm not really trying to kick it no more. No, I can't come around," or "No, I can't do that." It's not because I hate you, but it's actually because I love you. Right? And it's because I love me. even more. Now, does that mean?
No. And then the thing is, like, we have more in a line, especially us as therapists. And it's like, if I get a DUI, I may lose my license. So will I be able to create that healing for others? So I think also by you, whatever career you do, right? When you heal, there's sometimes more at stake than making those same behavioral patterns and stuff like that. And I don't want to do that, right? And so therefore, me honoring them and me honoring myself is sometimes putting that boundary, being like, sorry, man, I can hang out with you in this situations, but not maybe on these situations, right? And so maybe you have to adapt to or what that looks like, right?
Facts. So we're getting close to time, bro.
Okay.
I got a couple more questions for you. Outside of what we was just talking about, it was a good conversation. I wish we could keep on going, but
we'll do it again.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Most definitely. Yeah, when I make it out there, next time we're gonna have the beach as the background.
Right,
we're gonna have the beach as the background. In your life, how do you define success for yourself?
I think success for me is just having a balanced life. I teach. I like to say you practice what you preach, right? And so like I want to have a balanced like emotional lifestyle, a balanced spiritual life, a balanced physical life, a balanced professional life. And I feel like if I'm balanced in everything, then I can keep going, right? And so I want to continue to provide healing and whatnot, but if I myself are burned out or not healed, I'm not going to be able to do that. And I think I had to take care of myself to be able to continue to do this thing that I love. I love to be part of the early process, middle process, and late process of people's healings and whatnot, and saving their lives sometimes from suicide, right? Or saving their lives from generational patterns that we discussed, saving their life from substances, right? Seeing them sober, married, career, right? Seeing all that. I want to see that for my clients here in Nebraska and Colorado, and hopefully now California soon, and I think that for me would be success. And then ultimately I have a dream to go to all Latin American countries, and then end up living there at some point. So that's still a dream. I don't know if I could convince my wife there, but
Ooh, why not? Why your wife ain't trying to? Why you ain't trying to go to? Come on, man. Why?
So my wife is Mexican and Black, and so there's obviously racism still over there. So we talk about that, and obviously there's a privilege of me wanting to come back, kind of thing. But I'm like, what about if we have a rich house by the beach, kind of thing. So I'm playing the long run. But I think I'll convince my wife at some point.
Bro, I got a homie. He also lives out in Cali. Him and his wife are talking about buying like properties on like certain like islands, certain destination, and just having those properties there, Airbnb-ing them when they're not there, and then like whenever they want to turn off that Airbnb, just like planning out like 2-3 week trips where they go do that. Like
that's what I want. I want a balanced life. I want to be able to eat some fish, some shrimp, a good steak, go surf, go swim. And then that's it. That's how I ended up. But right now, I feel like I'm excited to just be a therapist, a private practice therapist, a professor, continue to teach the new therapists like my own story, and then continue to help my clients on their healing journey.
Most definitely. Last question for you. What is something that you want to leave with the people today from your story that you feel like can start to bring on the change, bring on the impact in their life so they can start doing differently for themselves?
Yeah. So I think, seeing another Latino man share his vulnerabilities, his just everything, the pain. I hope that you see some hope and some light, and that there are other Latino men. I know there aren't that many, but there are Latino men wanting this healing, wanting the desire. And I hope that the more of us that you see, the more of us we can create, and the more of us we can continue to go back to your communities and change that, right? Our Latina women need us, and we're kind of letting them down sometimes. And so I hope with more Latino men out there to provide that safety, that healing, that love that they desire, I think we can make a better community.
Most definitely. Bro, it's always good being able to sit down with you. Always good being able to talk with you. I appreciate you for making some time in your day, bro, to come out here, sit on the couch, speak into the mic, and just share your wisdom and your knowledge with us, bro. So truthfully.
Appreciate you, man. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing with this and everything you've been doing with your clients and here in Omaha.
Man, it's easy. And y'all, I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of the CYR podcast. Start cleaning your room so you can change your life and creating the resilience that you want to see. We out.
Hey, look at you. Dude, that was fun. How was it?
That was good, bro. That was good, man.